let's get to the state of women's hockey, because this is an important subject to tackle based on some reporting from Haley Salvian in The Athletic on Monday, basically that the PWHPA has ended discussions, broken off talks with the PHF in terms of potentially coming together and joining forces. I think we've all been waiting for the women's professional game to take this next step. The PWHPA has all of the top players in the world, all the Olympians as part of their group. And then the PHF has sort of the next tier down of top women's hockey players that are playing professionally. And we've all sort of been waiting and wondering, how can this happen? How can this come together so that you have both the best women's players in the world joining forces with a league that has some structure and has some financial might behind it? Yet these two sides have never been able to find common ground. And the NHL has stepped back, and Commissioner Gary Bettman has said very publicly, we'll step up and support the women's game when the time is right. And the time is right when you have one unified league ready to go. I feel like in the meantime, and as Commissioner Gary Bettman actually met with both these two sides within the last month as they began their talks again, that can't happen until they find common ground, and it doesn't seem like they're going to. So which one's going to end up in the end coming out ahead?
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing is that we've kind of been put in this situation where they have to be pitted against each other. One has to survive somehow, right? And I think that that's not very helpful for the entire women's hockey game as a whole. I mean, there needs to be a professional league. I think that there's enough momentum right now among the women's sports, not just in hockey, but in basketball and soccer. There is a path forward for women's professional sports, and it's starting to become clearer and clearer. It's not as clear in hockey because of these two entities and not being able to work together. Now, one of the things that Haley reported on that I think is important is that there is some concern about where the sources of funding are coming from for the PHF. And that is, there's an executive on their board that, has ties to a Russian company, Yandex, that is basically the top tech company in Russia. And that is a concern for the PWHPA reportedly. But aside from that, I think that there's a lot of people that have a lot invested in this right now on the PHF side. They've gotten somewhere around $25 million worth of funding, but I think the PWHPA is saying, okay, that's great, but what is sustainable from that? Where do we grow from here? And I think that there's still a lot of mistrust, and I think that they can coexist. I think there is a path forward for them to coexist, but we do need to figure out exactly, I think the PWHPA in particular doesn't have that league structure that the PHF has right now, which is really confusing for fans and is a barrier to entry for enough people where it's like, I don't really understand what this is. So we're moving in the right direction, but we're kind of stalled right now. I still think that this is something that has to come together quickly. And I hope that there is, if they can't get along, that they can coexist. And I just don't know exactly how that's going to look going forward.
Yeah, I just have my doubts, Chris, as to whether they can coexist, because
right,
no matter what, when you've got the top players in the world not participating in your league, you're always going to be viewed, even if you have the structure and have the money, as sort of second tier or subpar. You need to have the best players competing against each other consistently. That's what the PWHPA has, but they don't have the funding. They don't have the structure. I still wish these two sides could find a way to coexist, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. And until that happens, I think they're only going to continue to cannibalize each other. And it sort of seems like while they both want to succeed, that they've both got their own path in terms of how they think that might happen. And in some ways, when you look at a lot of the failures of the PHF going back to their Lake Placid bubble, even going back to their playoffs last year, their MVP, as Haley reported, getting $1,000 in Dick's Sporting Goods gift cards, like that's not any way to treat your best players. So there's been a lot of disappointment in terms of the PHF and how things have unfolded. I understand the mistrust from players in the PWHPA. There's been a lot of turmoil as well, a lot of turnover at the top of that league. There's a lot happening here. And so certainly we're going to keep our eye on all that's happening in the women's game. We'd love to see one unified, the best players in the world being paid properly so that they don't have to have other jobs in the workforce, that they can focus solely on playing and putting their best product on the ice. We'll get there one day. Just I wish it was sooner than it has been.